Scotland, 1680. A land of rugged highlands, misty glens, and a people caught between crown and conscience. This was the year of the Sanquhar Declaration, the rise of the Cameronians, and the brutal dawn of what history would remember as the killing time. It is a story of faith and rebellion, of ordinary men and women who dared to defy a king. And it begins, not in royal palaces or battlefields, but in the open fields where voices of faith refuse to be silenced. To understand 1680, we must travel back over 40 years to 1638. In a packed church in Edinburgh, nobles, ministers, and ordinary Scots signed the National Covenant. They pledged to defend the purity of their Presbyterian faith, rejecting attempts by monarchs to impose bishops. To them, the crown had no right to interfere with Christ's headship over his church. 5 years later came the Solemn League and Covenant of 1643, a bond not only for Scotland, but across England and Ireland, seeking to secure Presbyterianism throughout the kingdoms. This was not a mere political document. It was a spiritual vow, a promise written not just in ink, but in blood. Fast forward to 1660. King Charles II returns from exile, restoring the monarchy after years of civil war. With him came revenge, and a determination to crush the Covenanter movement. He re-established episcopacy, bishops ruling the church, and branded anyone who refused as rebels. Ministers were expelled from their pulpits. Worship outside the state church became illegal. But the faith of the Covenanters burned brighter in persecution. They met secretly in the hills, gathering in thousands at conventicles, outdoor services under the open sky. Imagine it, the wind whipping across the moors, a preacher's voice rising above it, men, women, even children standing in silence, knowing at any moment government dragoons might descend. To attend was treason. Yet they came. The government cracked down with brutal force. Troopers scoured the countryside, dragging worshippers to prison. Families were fined into poverty. Some were tortured on the infamous boot, an iron device that crushed bones. Others were hanged in marketplaces, their corpses left to rot as warnings. Still, the Covenanters would not yield. In the words of one martyr, "We fear not them that kill the body, but him who hath power over the soul." The struggle was no longer about worship alone. It was about freedom of conscience, a principle worth dying for. And then came a bold and dangerous step. On June 22, 1680, in the small market town of Sanquhar, a group of armed Covenanters rode in. Their leader was a fiery preacher named Richard Cameron. Before the townsfolk, they unfurled a written statement, the Sanquhar Declaration. Its words thundered with defiance. They rejected King Charles II as their ruler, calling him a tyrant and a persecutor. They declared war not only on episcopacy, but on the monarchy itself. This was treason in the eyes of the crown. But to Cameron and his followers, it was obedience to God. Richard Cameron was no ordinary preacher. Fierce in conviction, fearless in danger, he believed Christ alone was king. His followers became known as the Cameronians. They carried swords and Bibles, seeing themselves as soldiers of the covenant. They lived as fugitives, hunted across the glens, moving by night, worshipping in secret. They were branded fanatics, extremists. But to their supporters, they were heroes of the faith. One eyewitness described Cameron as a man whose prayers could shake both heaven and earth. But his days were numbered. Barely a month after Sanquhar, Cameron and about 60 Covenanters camped at Airds Moss, a lonely stretch of moorland in Ayrshire. At dawn on July 22, 1680, Royal Dragoons swept down upon them. Outnumbered and outgunned, the Covenanters stood their ground. The clash was brief but savage. Gunfire echoed across the moss. Swords clashed. Men fell. Richard Cameron fought to the last, but he was struck down, killed where he stood. His head and hands were hacked off, carried to Edinburgh, and displayed as trophies of royal justice. Yet even in death, Cameron's cause did not die. His followers carried on, whispering his name like a battle cry. After Cameron's death, the persecution grew even harsher. The years 1680 to 1688 became infamous as the killing time. Royal troops had orders to show no mercy. Anyone caught at a conventicle, or refusing to swear loyalty to the king, could be executed on the spot. Old men were shot in their fields. Women were drowned in tidal pools, tied to stakes as the waters slowly rose. Children were beaten until they named their ministers. Terror hung over the land. Families were forced to choose, betray their faith, or face destruction. And still, the Covenanters endured. In hidden caves, on stormy moors, by flickering torchlight, they prayed and sang psalms, convinced that God himself heard their cries. The Crown believed that cruelty would break the Covenanters. Instead, it forged legends. Names like Donald Cargill, James Renwick, and the Wigton martyrs became etched into Scotland's memory. Their blood was seen as the seed of freedom. When the Glorious Revolution of 1688 swept away King James VII and secured Presbyterianism as Scotland's national faith, the sacrifices of 1680 were vindicated. The Covenanters had lost battles, but they had won the war for Scotland's soul. The story of the Covenanters is not only a tale of Scotland's past, it is a universal story. It asks us, what would we risk for freedom of conscience? What price would we pay for the right to worship according to our faith? For the men and women of 1680, the answer was clear. They chose faith over fear, conscience over crown, and God over king. The hills of Scotland still whisper their story. The moors where they prayed are silent now, but their legacy remains. The year 1680 stands as a turning point, a moment when courage confronted tyranny, and ordinary people became martyrs. If you've been moved by this story of the Covenanters, please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments.